What's up, everyone? A few months ago, I purchased some really cool frogs from Patrick Neighbors at Saurian Enterprises. The species name for this frog is Dendrobates Auratus, and the locale is Coca, which is located on the Pacific coast of Panama. If you follow the channel's Facebook or Instagram pages, you've probably seen me post a few pictures of them. This locale was first imported into the US back in 2020 and is still pretty uncommon in the hobby. These frogs are juveniles, so hopefully by next year this time I should have some tadpoles on the way. But before I show these frogs off, let's get into the build. The enclosure I'm using here is another knockdown enclosure from ReptiZoo. It's a 24 by 18 by 24. Just like with my previous builds, I like to start with the biggest pieces I have first, and in this case this is going to be the focal point of the build. Once I'm happy with the placement of the first piece, I'll go ahead and tack it down with some hot glue and then start building up around it. Now, to hide these transitions, I've really started to use a lot more cork bark pieces instead of just covering up with the cocoa core. It kind of blends in, makes it a more natural look. Of course, having just said that, I decided to just dump a bunch of cocoa core on top of this. And just another friendly reminder, if you do use hot glue to put these things together, you need to really cover it well with the silicone. There's nothing worse than having your background fall apart once it gets wet. Now, when you put these cork bark panels up, you really want to make sure you put quite a lot of silicone on the back, especially if you plan on carving it up. If not, once you start carving, you're just going to rip the piece right off the wall. That hole for the wire pass-through grommets kind of nice if you use temperature and humidity probes, but I don't use them, so it's kind of useless for me. Now, unfortunately, I think some of my builds in the past were missing a bit of depth to them, so adding these branches here and bringing the background forward more is going to help accomplish that. I'd originally planned on leaving that hole open and using it as a planting location, but after I got that first branch in, I thought I could use another one. This was kind of a large area to try to cover up these pieces, but I think in the end it worked out pretty well. Once I was satisfied with the background, I let it set out overnight, came back and did a few touch-ups the next day, and let it sit for a week. And as always, the first thing going down is the drainage layer. You can use anything you want as long as it separates the substrate from any water that builds up from misting down on the bottom. Another benefit to using this filter media is you don't have to worry about your frogs or anything else going down underneath your drainage layer and getting stuck. And speaking of getting stuck, it's always a good idea to fill in these holes with the end of the cork bark tubes with some filter media or just anything else to keep the animals from getting down inside there. Adding the sponge media also is really great for keeping your substrate up if you do plan on using the end of these cork bark tubes for planters like I'm doing here. And once the substrate's in, I go around with the wet sphagnum, just filling in the gaps and cracks in the background and preparing some more areas for planting. Now, since the background is pretty dry, I do like to mist quite a bit before I start planting. Now, this is the first time I've used this plant, but I was told it does like to creep quite a bit. It's a fast grower, and once it blooms, it gets some really cool flowers on it. Something you may notice when I'm putting these plants in the substrate is I never pack the substrate around the roots and really compact it down. Compressing your substrate around the plant roots too tightly usually ends up suffocating the roots, causing them to rot, and your plant won't last too much longer after that. I think something a lot of people have a misconception about with tropical plants is that they grow in some rich soil environment, which is actually not true. Most tropical rainforests, the soil is pretty devoid of any nutrients, so these plants all rely on rooting out through the loam and the leaf layers on the forest floor. Since I don't have a top on this, and obviously the front's not closed, I'm misting this quite a lot. Just because these plants have been in grow out bins for quite a long time in 100% humidity, so I think even lowering it down to like 60-70% is going to dry these out pretty quick. And just like building out your background with starting with your bigger pieces and then working the smaller ones in, that's something I like to do with the planting as well. Start off with your bigger plants, the ones that are going to grow larger, and then start filling in the other smaller areas with the smaller plants. When planting mosses in your terrarium or your vivarium, you can pretty much use any type of moss you want. Unfortunately, unlike tropical moss, which grows year-round, temperate mosses usually go through a dormancy period where they will slow down growth or stop growing, and unfortunately that makes them susceptible to fungal or mold growth. I know a lot of larger plants are really cool, but there's just something about a lot of these micro ferns and mosses that I just really enjoy seeing in a terrarium. As you can tell by the number of times I've been misting this stuff, the house is really dry today, so things are drying out pretty quick. This is a plant I didn't think I had left anymore that I really enjoy using. It grows pretty fast once it gets established. Luckily I found a piece of it growing in one of my grow out bins, snaking through a lot of the other plants. Now this ficus has been going by Ficus Panama for as long as I can remember, and today I actually found out the correct name for it. I think Christmas moss is really underrated and not used enough in terrariums. It really grows well once it starts getting established. It's not just for aquariums. Biophytums are definitely another really cool plant in my opinion. You just don't see enough of in terrariums. Now for the all-important cleanup crew. I'm still kind of shocked at the prices I see for these dwarf white isopods with as prolific as they are. One thing I did forget to record here is, even though I do mist quite a bit when I'm planting, I really like to give the terrarium a good soak down once I'm done planting everything. And that soak down even goes for after I put the leaf litter down. Not only does it help kick off the whole bioactive process, but it also actually encourages your microfauna, the springtails and isopods, to come up out of the soil. Now, besides making your terrarium look good, botanicals also seem to be a really good magnet for pulling the springtails and isopods up out of the leaf litter and the substrate and making good snack spots for your frogs. And once again, I almost forgot to add the bromeliads. Now, larger frogs like the Auratus aren't going to use them, but as far as I'm concerned, it's just a cherry on top of a tropical setup. And speaking of the frogs, a month later, let's introduce them to their new home. Now, these really are some amazing looking frogs. As much as I like all my other ones, I think these just might be my favorite now. Unfortunately, as juveniles, they are still quite shy, but I'm guessing the older they get, the more bold they're going to become and the more I'll see them out. And that's a wrap for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, and I think I'll just let the camera roll for a little bit here while the frogs explore and settle into their new home.